everybody, it's Romania Black, and it's been a hot second since episode 49 of Chihayafuru, and we're on the season finale. Now, it's not the end of Chihayafuru for a bit. Next week there is an OVA that I have been told by the moderators that I need to watch, so I'm going to be checking out that OVA next week. But then, because Ace of the Diamond season 4 is going to be starting up in next month, in April, because the next season of Ace of the Diamond is starting up, I'm going to be taking a break from Chihayafuru to recharge myself, to watch Ace of the Diamond, and then when that series is over, I will be coming back to hopefully season 3, which I've heard is great. Don't want to know too much about it. Y'all know I like to be a blind reactor, but season 2 has been... I've talked to Grace in the comment section about it. Season 2 has been kind of like, I've heard from people who have been trying not to spoil me, and I appreciate you not spoiling me, that lots of people have been like, oh, season 1's good, season 2, the pacing's kind of and then season 3 is great. So that encourages me that season 3 is supposedly great, but it is nice to know as well that other people are like, yeah, season 2's pacing is kind of because that's how I've felt. I am like, surely I'm not the only one that thinks season 2 is kind of like a little on the rougher edge than season 1, which I felt was really streamlined and really liked it a lot. So we'll see where that goes. But I have a lot to talk about in the comment section, so apologies ahead of time, because there's a lot of comments that I want to go through, but y'all had lots of things that were really good to say, so I want to note that. So for Noda, for episode 48, said the poem of the day is to see the beautiful cherry blossoms. This is a repeat of season 1 episode 24's poem. Interestingly, season 1 episode 24 was titled Nobody Wants to See the Beautiful Cherry Blossoms, while season 2 episode 23 is titled To See the Beautiful Cherry Blossoms. Naturally, we can call them sister episodes. The beautiful cherry blossoms represented the Master Queen game in season 1 episode 24, where Chihaya and Taichi were forced to watch from the comforts of his house, a TV screen separating them from reality. This time, it's the meaning. The meaning is still similar. The beautiful cherry blossoms represent the final Class A tournament, but this time they're able to watch in person, Chihaya having been recognized by Shinobu, and Taichi having been promoted to Class A. A year has gone by, and they've grown so much. And for Noda's note, and yet so little at the same time. Yeah, it's like a whole year has passed, and there has been so much that's changed, and at the same time, it's like, some things haven't changed. Enough for Romania. Macmillan translates poem 73 as such. How lovely the cherry blossoms, blooming high on the peaks of Takasago. May the mists in the foothills not rise to block the view. So nice, so awesome. Love that translation. Thank you for Noda. Will, for episode 48, said, you mentioned that Arata doesn't know that Taichi sees him as a threat or enemy. But to me, it seems Arata and Taichi understand each other's position better than you give them credit. From the time they were kids, they've been friends in Karuta, but rivals for Chihaya. To me, the main reason why Arata doesn't approach Chihaya or send her messages is because he knows that Taichi loves her. And the reason why Taichi doesn't act towards her is because he thinks that she loves Arata. I don't want to get into it, but that frustrates me so much because I don't disagree with Will. I think to me, Arata believes that him and Taichi are on really amicable terms. I mean, I think he knows that he doesn't have any idea that Taichi's like, you're my enemy. He doesn't know that. I mean, what we're saying is just assumptions. The manga has not come out and given us what Arata's perspective about Taichi is right now. I mean, if you knew somebody when you were 10 and then you saw them again at age 16, your view of them would have changed in 6 years. It just would have been there had that happened. So I get what that's like, but it makes me very frustrated with Taichi that Taichi is kind of hoarding Chihaya to himself. He's not correcting Arata in that here's the thing. If Taichi really, it's very frustrating because, yeah, it makes sense. Arata doesn't approach Chihaya because he thinks that Taichi likes her. He does like her, but it's frustrating because Chihaya has no freaking idea. And it's like, Taichi, you need to tell her so she can decide for herself if she likes you or not. And then maybe Arata can talk to her because Arata's being kind of the better man at this point because he's being respectful and you're hoarding her all to yourself. So, and she doesn't even know it. So it's just like, it's very frustrating. But anyway, Lee HR says, what I think this episode 48, is supposed to be going for is mirroring the one from back in season 1, where Chihaya expresses her annoyance with Taichi for staying with her when she closed herself off in the locker. If you remember back in that episode, she was frustrated that he had stayed with her because she thought he should be watching Suo and Harada play, as they are likely to be two of his biggest rivals in Class A when he makes it there. I do agree with that, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because that is a pretty good comparison. Then they go on to say, it doesn't work though, well, in my opinion, because instead of being an interesting callback, it just leaves you with the feeling of immense frustration that he has instantly relapsed after a major character growth moment that was 40 episodes in the making. Thank you, Lee H. Oh my God, that's exactly it. It's like when you've spent 40 episodes making progress and you relapse back to a callback that you should have moved past. I've talked enough about episode 48, but thank you. That, like, I felt such validation. I was like, yes, thank you. I'm glad other people, some people are like, we're just afraid to comment because we don't want the fandom getting mad at us. And I'm like, please help a girl out. If you're an Arata fan, I need your help in the comment section. I won't let people be mean. We ain't about that in this community. Everybody can be respectful for sure. Alice for episode 49 says, what I found really interesting about this episode that I only noticed now that I've watched it with you is that you get to hear everyone's thoughts in this episode except Arata's. You get into the mind of the spectators, Nishida, the Fujisaki coach, the parents, the Karuta committee, Taichi, Chihaya, even Shinobu, but not Arata. We don't know what he's thinking the entire match. We know what everyone else is thinking, but not him. And I think this really adds to the image that the mangaka portrays him as, this impassionate god in this Chihayafuru card. He intentionally is kept distant from the entire cast, and we only see his triumph through the eyes of others, making him a deity-like figure. To other characters, he's become more of a goal to achieve than his own person. He's the one Nishida and Shinobu want to beat and surmount. He's the one Chihaya wants to reach, but feels like there's too much distance between them, both literally and figuratively. He's the one that Taichi wants to be better than to win Chihaya's heart. He's become the goal for so many of the characters, it really distances him and makes him feel untouchable. Even Shinobu, who is the queen, got really humanized this episode, with us really getting into her headspace and seeing her struggle as being on the losing end. We see her flaws in her earlier strategy. We see her taking risks, becoming aggressive, and straying from her usual style. Meanwhile, Arata is shown as being perfectly composed and unfazed by everything. Everyone comments how eerily relaxed and calm he is. As you said, he didn't even break a sweat or is shown struggling through the entire match. Mind you, I don't like what the mangaka is doing with Arata's character by making him feel distant and deity-like, but it's very deliberate. We can only hope the mangaka humanizes him more later in the story. I think that the mangaka will. Look, I'm going to be the first person to point out when I think a mangaka doesn't do something that I don't like, or when they do something I don't think is as good as it could be. I'm going to be the first person to point that out because I ain't scared. But in the same vein, I'm rooting for this series. And knowing what we know from last episode's intro, that this series is not even at halfway over, we still have a lot left to go. I am hopeful that now that Taichi is Class A, when we get to season 3, I'm hopeful that he'll get the chance to face Arata and we'll get some more context with Arata, and maybe Arata won't be this mysterious figure anymore. But I'm kind of with Alice. It is frustrating to have a character like Arata right there in front of you, and the mangaka is actively choosing to not expand upon him. It's frustrating, for sure, but it's very deliberate, like Alice said. Like, I agree, the mangaka is making a choice, and we can choose to have faith in that mangaka's choice while criticizing them. We can do that, but we can have faith in them that they're going to expand upon that later on, or we can not watch the series anymore thinking the mangaka is not going to do it. So that's kind of, those are kind of some of your options that you have. There are more options than that, obviously, but, I'm choosing to be hopeful. Alexandra Q says for episode 49, I just had the most face-hitting realization while writing this comment. That Fujisaki's coach is exactly how I pictured Chihaya being a coach. Same! With incredible instincts and great insights for her players, even though she is not as stoic as Fujisaki's coach is. And Dr. Harada is who I can imagine Taichi becoming. Someone that keeps Karuta in his life and is really good at it, but Karuta is not the center of his life. And Taichi opening a Karuta association or whatever the place Dr. Harada coaches is called, I forget, and training people like that would work well for his character. Those parallels are so much fun. Arata, of course, would follow in the steps of his grandfather, though I do like the idea of Taichi becoming the master, as you've mentioned in previous reactions. I like the idea of Taichi like Dr. Harada. I don't picture his personality like Harada. Harada's so like easygoing and like bumbly and da-da-da-da-da. I don't picture Taichi being that easygoing, but on the other hand, I don't know. We will have to see where it goes from here. But Alexander Q also said, I think Taichi was telling Chihaya that she couldn't lean forward and practice her swings in the middle of a match because it would be distracting for the players and not try to stop her drive. I do agree. The swing thing, in hindsight, going back and rewatching that episode, I do agree the swing thing was a bit much. She shouldn't have done that. And the leaning forward thing, Shinobu was doing the same thing as well, as people have pointed out. So it's about the form. I guess for me, it's just Taichi's always mothering her. And I just am like, if you're trying to be her boyfriend, stop mothering her. Like, let someone else do it, let the coach do it, or find some other way, because it's always him. And I'm like, it just feels like there's other things he could do, you know? But anyway, I thought that was a good comment. And then Grace had 2 comments that they were going to talk about. And so I guess we will start with this one here that says, my birthday is the same as Taichi's, April 2nd. And Shinobu's is April 22nd. So she's like on the cusp of Taurus and Aries. What a crazy cusp. Since you like this kind of stuff, in Japan they associate personality with blood types. In the character book, it's said that Chihaya is type B, Arata and Shinobu are O's, and Taichi is A. This is what I found in Japanese culture subreddit. Take it with a grain of salt. I wish I knew my blood type because I would be all about that, but I don't know my blood type. I feel so bad. A, which would be Taichi. Taichi's best traits by blood type are earnest, reserved, sensible, patient, responsible, cautious. That checks out. Worst traits: fastidious, over-earnest, obsessive, stubborn. Obsessive for sure. Stubborn, yeah, they kind of work for him. Chihaya's B best traits: passionate, active, creative, animal-loving, flexible, cheerful, friendly, optimistic. Worst traits: irresponsible, forgetful, selfish, lazy, impatient, unreliable, and going their own way. Chihaya, I wouldn't describe Chihaya as lazy or selfish, but she's greedy, so some of those match up. And then O, best traits: confident, self-determined, ambitious, strong-willed, intuitive, and agreeable, competitive, and athletic. All those describe Shinobu and Arata. Worst traits: unpredictable, spiteful, self-centered, cold, aggressive, arrogant, envious, and ruthless. Now, those describe Shinobu in a lot of ways. I don't know. Again, the mangaka's not giving us a lot with Arata, so it's hard to know. But yeah, Grace also says, I believe Arata's biggest disadvantage isn't related to social class, but because of his grandpa's health. You said that you won't read the manga, but this is established in, now they did go in a little bit of detail here, and there's a middle school prequel side manga published between seasons 2 and 3 in the anime. It covers the middle school life of Arata, Taichi, Chihaya, and Shinobu. Even if it's a prequel and you won't read it, I would prefer not to give any spoilers because you might change your mind one day. We're going to talk about that here in a second. So, I'll just talk about what was shown in the anime. He couldn't practice as much or go to tournaments because he had to take care of his grandpa, and we know about that part. I'm not opposed to looking at the prequel manga since it's set between, since it was published between seasons 2 and season 3. Since I'm going to have some time off after the OVA and I'll be looking at Ace of the Diamond, I might do some research and work into that for the summer. We'll see. I'll ask the mods about it and see where I can find, where I can look at that. Especially if it's not been animated, then that might be something to look at before season 3 as well. We shall see. Grace also says, right now, Arata is able to play and practice as much as he wants. He doesn't have to worry too much about school because he has a good plan for his university entrance exams, as we've discussed. But he also has his part-time job, and Taichi has to focus on his studies because if his grades drop, he has to give up on Karuta. So in this way, I think they're both similar somehow. I do miss seeing more of their outside Karuta struggles. How much time does Arata spend working? How much time does Taichi spend studying? That's the thing. The mangaka does not show us Taichi studying outside of Karuta. So for all we know, Taichi is a naturally smart person and he doesn't have to study much, because I was like a straight A student in high school. Did I study much at home? No, I didn't have to. I could get by in school by just being like, oh yeah, I know this, and be good. So in my mind, I'm like, yeah, Taichi has to maintain good grades, but he doesn't seem to, the mangaka doesn't show him struggling. So it's kind of like, yeah, but does he really have to study that much? He seems like he does pretty well. He's not like Tsutomu. Tsutomu, they actually showed us his grades dropping. So that kind of gave us some indication of his struggle there. But Taichi, for all we know, he's got straight A's and he doesn't have to study. He's just naturally smart enough to pass the bar. So, I don't know. Maybe the mangaka will show us that in seasons to come. Agreed. I think he also wants to watch the match. Taichi does, especially after Arata declared he'd move to Tokyo if he won. That was something there I forgot about. So it'll be curious to see in this episode if Taichi confronts Arata or tells Chihaya about him moving to Tokyo, because now Taichi knows. So I wonder if we're going to see any aftermath with that. I think Chihaya is also stunned because she finally met Chihayafuru. She was able to witness her ideal Karuta. For me, this is a sign of maturity. I always talk about how I wish for her to grow beyond Karuta, and for me, this is one of those moments of her becoming more self-aware. She always wanted to be better at Karuta, but she didn't have a clear idea of what better would look like. This is what she kept wondering this season. She tried to copy Shinobu and Suo, but now she's found her own form. It might seem contradictory since this is still Karuta related, but she'll have to change as a person to achieve what she wants to do in her form and not just as a player. That's what I understand as growth. It's not a technique she needs to pick up, but a state of mind. Yeah, and that's not easy, right? That's going to take time. And this is kind of a slow burn series, so I think she'll get there. But yeah, that makes more sense with her watching and seeing how Shinobu and Arata played and her wanting to have that same mindset, And then finally, Grace has for episode 49, one had noted that Taichi had been compared to Apollo, so maybe Arata could be compared to Poseidon. And I was like, oh, that's a really good comparison. But they said below is information compiled from sacred text sites, the 100 Poets blogspot, as well as 1000 Summers and Taru Fukui blogspots for poem 17 by Ariwa no Narihara Asan, translated by Mosto. Unheard of, even in the legendary age of the awesome gods. Tatsuda River in scarlet, and the water flowing under it. Macmillan translates it as, such beauty unheard of, even in the age of the raging gods. The Tatsuya River, tie-dyeing its waters in autumnal colors. The writer, who lived in AD 825 to 880, was the grandson of Emperor Saga and was the Don Juan of Old Japan. He was banished because of an intrigue he had with the Empress, and his adventures are fully related in the Issei Monogatari. The Tatsuda stream is not far from Nara and is famous for its maples in autumn. Chihayafuru, literally 1,000 quick brandishing swords, is a pillow word or recognized epithet for the gods and almost corresponds to the Virgil's pious Aeneas and Homer's Odysseus, the son of Zeus, Odysseus of many devices. Chihayafuru modifies Kamiyo, meaning the age of the gods. This age of the gods is not simply a long age long ago, but the age when miraculous events took place, and yet, even in this miraculous age, something was unheard of. There are two main readings of the poem. First one is a reading from the composition as a depiction of autumn scenery. Because the poem is included in the second book of autumn poems in Kokinshu, this reading is the most obvious one. The autumn leaves, however, are not specifically mentioned in the original poem. They are implied by a specific shade of red in the fourth line, where kara-kurenai refers to a color very close to crimson. As noted by the prefix kara, the color was introduced to Japan from mainland Asia and was therefore not primarily associated with autumn foliage, but together with the famous for autumn leaves Tatsuda River, the crimson of kara-kurenai undoubtedly implies the red leaves. And even still, the imagery of the poem is not entirely clear because the last line of the poem is a topic of debate. The original Kokinshu reading seems to have been Mizu Kukuru to wa, referring to water tie-dyed in crimson. And in this case, the poem is probably nothing more, nothing less than a stunning autumn scenery described in a charming and sophisticated manner. However, Fujiwara no Taika, 1162 to 1241, who's credited with selecting the Hyokunin Isshu poems, seems to have read that last line as Mizu Kuguru to wa, Mostao 1996-192, which in turn changes the meaning of the last two lines to water, flowing under crimson, and gives the poem a possible hidden meaning. The second reading with Mizu Kuguru to wa could be interpreted as a well-disguised love poem, where the water flowing under autumn leaves alludes to undying passionate love, which must remain hidden. The head note of the Chihayafuru poem reads, quote, composed on the topic of autumn leaves floating on the Tatsuta River, as painted on a screen belonging to the Second Ward Empress, Fujiwara no Koshi, when she still called the Lady of the Wardrobe of the Spring Palace, that is, Mother of the Crown Prince, Mostao 1996. My interpretation below involves when Chihaya sees Arata smiling and relaxed even when playing the queen, she is mesmerized. This is the ideal Karuta she's been craving. She might have thought that so far she's been playing Aramburu, and she wants that stability of playing her own Karuta no matter what the situation or the opponent. We've seen glimpses of it already, how powerful Chihaya can be when she's absolutely focused. She wants to be like that all the time. She understood the secret behind Arata's strength is this state of mind, but how can she achieve that? This is an immense sign of maturity from her part because this isn't about a new technique she needs to learn, like Shinobu's precise takes or Suo's 28 one-syllable cards. This isn't something she can copy from anyone else. She'll have to change her mindset to mature as a person, to truly reflect on herself and create something of her own. I like that description. I like the idea of her just figuring out like how she needs to become a player that believes in herself and her own abilities, because that's kind of where she struggles. She's trying to copy everybody else but not be herself. P.S. One thing I noticed while researching about the poem and writing this post, although Chihaya has lost the Chia card a couple of times, this is a card that Taichi has never lost. Watching your reaction, I realized this is the last card that allowed him to become Class A. Also in this episode, Kana mentions the poem about the burning love that must be hidden, just like the meaning of the hidden love below the river in Chihayaburu's poem. Burning for love, drowning in love. I thought it was amusing this idea represented in the symbols of both fire and water. You know what? Fire and water with Taichi and Arata. I wish I could ship Taichi and Arata more, but my brain is just like, I know it's not going to happen, so I will be wasting my time. But I wish I could, because I would like to ship Taichi and Arata, and I really wish I could ship Shinobu and Chihaya, because they're like Karuta soulmates, but this mangaka is not here to give you Yuri or Yaoi, clearly. So anyway, I've talked for like over 20 minutes. So thank you all so much for these comments. I really appreciate it. So I am very excited to see, we're on our last episode. We have an OVA next week, but it's crazy that we're near the end of season 2, right? Anyway, it has been such a journey with season 2, and I can't believe we are at episode 50 of Chihayafuru altogether, but episode 25 of season 2. But we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to get started and check out and see what we get. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do it to it. How can an episode be so good and have so much good to it and yet be so frustrating? I don't know how y'all are not affected. I guess if you're a Taichi and Chihaya shipper, you're just living in this la world of greatness. But for me, who is very much a Chihaya Arata shipper, I feel like I am like constantly fighting for my life every episode. And it's like, what do we do? So that's where I'm at. But yeah, we're going to dive back into this episode because it was a great finale. Please don't spoil, but I'm hoping that the OVA is them at the training camp. That would be really fun. I would really like to see that. So I'm going to hope that that is the case. I'm in the process of getting a hold of that OVA now, so that we'll have it next week. But yeah, like what? Oh my gosh. So let's dive into this episode and see what we get. And we're going to look at some screenshots, go through this here in 3, 2, 1. There was a lot with this that I really enjoyed. Starting the episode off with the instant aftermath, and everybody's just kind of wowed by Arata. Because, yeah, he did really good. Arata did great. I think the biggest thing is that a lot of people, they all, which rightfully so, Shinobu is put on this pedestal because she's the queen, and she deserves to be on that pedestal. The same with Suo, because they are the best of the best. The thing that gets me is that ever since season 1, people think that the queen is untouchable when we clearly know that's not the case. She's lost to Arata 4 times now. She's lost to other people as well. I'm pretty sure she's lost to Suo, or they've alluded to that fact. So I'm like, she's not infallible, but from like the one kid that's on Hoko's team, he immediately was like, oh, I can't beat her. And everyone assumes that they cannot face her. And because of that, if you go into a match thinking you're going to lose, you're going to lose. Like, there's no chance. It's mind over matter at that point. You'll psych yourself out every time. And so they're like, he's got this lifetime accomplishment against the queen. I do like the fact that Romu is like, he's no dark horse. No, Arata is a really good player. He's very balanced. He's very confident. He just knows he's good, and he's practiced, and he's got that all under his sleeve. Maybe I'm the only person that gets creeped out. I get kind of grossed out and creeped out by like the comparison of people to horses, where like, he's a thoroughbred. I was like, what is this? What is this, a Big and Rich song? People comparing people like stallions and horses. I'm not a fan of that metaphor. It kind of grosses me out. But anyway, because horses have like a weird like sexual thing to them sometimes with people. So it got like, eh. But I really like the parents and how supportive the mom is of Arata. Like, she was very much like, the dad is hot mess express. I kind of love him being a hot mess, but I love that she's like, well, I don't want to be alone in the house with you, but married couple banner right there. But he's like, what do we do? How do we get out of this? Maybe we should tell him we could win 2 in a row. And she's like, there's something I haven't told you. Your father took out an education life insurance policy for Arata, and Arata knows about it. I love the dad's like, nobody told me, and it's like, well, no. I kind of love that Arata definitely takes after his grandfather, but the mom is so sweet. I love this, where she's like, look, the dad is just like, well, nobody told me about any of this. Why was I left out? What's that? And they're like, aren't you going to miss having him around? And she's like, well, yeah, I'm going to miss it. Tokyo is expensive. But I love that she starts crying there. She's like, this is his dream. She very much, what I love about it is that she's a little bit different. Now, Taichi's mom, I don't want to give Taichi's mom too much shade, but I feel like Taichi's mom maybe doesn't realize how much Taichi really loves Karuta, so she just views it as him trying to be athletic or being competitive, and she thinks it doesn't matter what he's competitive in, so she doesn't realize how passionate he actually is about Karuta. But in Arata's case with his mom, she's like, this is where he shines. This is what he loves. She's like, he's doing what he loves, and he's shining at it all on his own. She's like, who am I to deny my son from being able to do something that he's so good at and loves so much? And I love that. I'm like, that's so awesome. I love that his mom is like that. So here's the thing. Taichi is, of course, realizing, as we talked about in the intro, that Arata is now going to go to Tokyo because he's won. And here's the thing. For all y'all, like, this is going to go back to Will's comment. I'm going to direct this directly. Does that look like a man who's a rival and hates you? No, it doesn't. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I feel like. I'm taking crazy pills when people question me about this, because I'm like, this is exactly what I'm freaking talking about. To the Taichi apologists, this man right here is like, hey, Taichi, high five. You did a great job. Hello? This man is clearly wanting to be friends with Taichi and is like, hey, good job, bro. Meanwhile, Taichi's like, this man is my enemy and I cannot stand him being around me because I'm jealous of him because he's a threat to me and my love for Chihaya. And I'm like, bro, it is a one-sided many things with Taichi. A one-sided many things. This man right here is not viewing Taichi in a negative way at all. at all. I'm sorry. Anybody that tells me that is not correct because there's no evidence of it. And meanwhile, Taichi's like, oh yeah, bro. Yeah, he's like, aren't you supposed to high five when you win? I wish I could ship them. I need to start shipping them because it would make me feel a lot better. But the show is not letting me do that. He's like, well, you won your match too, right, Taichi? And he's like, oh yeah, congrats. And Taichi, of course, is like, oh yeah. Meanwhile, I've had these horrible feelings against you, Arata. I probably need to take care of that, like the fudge, dude. Meanwhile, I do think it's crazy that if you talk about symbolism and imagery, Taichi was standing above Chihaya. And to be fair, Chihaya has two very different reactions to both of them winning their matches. With Taichi, she reacts like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you. I'm proud of you. We're teammates. You're my friend. I care about you. I am so happy that you won. With Arata, but she stays on the ground and Taichi stands above her. Like there's a very different imagery there. With Arata, she drags him down to the ground with her, but she has like the Taichi like hair over her eyes and she's like, congratulations on your victory. She has a very different reaction, which I was kind of bummed about because I wanted her to be happy for Arata like she was happy for Taichi, but she's not. Instead, she's projecting her own insecurities about, like, I wanted to be in that match against you or against Shinobu. And she's like, how are you always smiling? How are you always you're so calm when you play Karuta, even when you're up against somebody like Shinobu, how do you do it? And she internalizes, I wish she would have said this out loud, where she's like, I'm always so intense when I play, but you manage to keep this like perfect composure. Like, how do you do it? I am glad that the show at least gave us a go back around to this moment that he did talk to her in the hospital. We're going to talk about the pacing and the weirdness of that scene because it was weird. I'm not a fan of how that scene ended. I was like, what are we doing? But I'm glad that they went back to it. I was, as you probably noticed, so mad when this show did the very stupid thing that it does. And it has a moment where they could talk this out. And this is like, again, this is writing 101. And I get frustrated with the mangaka because of this, because I'm a writer. I'm a teacher of writing. I know all of like the structure and narrative and how you organize it. I know the behind the Ozian curtain, how you set this stuff up. So I can see from behind the scenes how this mangaka is doing this. For them to make this choice, it's very deliberate. It's very intentional, because if Chihaya had the conversation with him and he's like, oh, well, I really love playing Karuta with you, and I always think back to that moment. I mean, Taichi would have spontaneously combusted. Let's be real. Taichi would have melted into a puddle, and his entire ego and self-esteem would have been shattered beyond all recognition. So that, maybe it's good that we didn't see that happen. But the mangaka makes an intentional choice to have someone interrupt, and damn, Arata is so freaking polite that the moment you interrupt him, he's like, well, we'll carry this conversation never. And I'm like, I was so pissed. So pissed. I'm glad they at least had the conversation later. I also feel like this was a missed opportunity for Taichi, because Taichi in that moment, seeing again Chihaya on the ground, distraught, has clearly been distraught. Taichi could have said something. He could have said something. What he would have said, I don't know, but he could have offered some support. You clearly, apparently like this girl. It would have been good if you'd shown support, but I know everybody in the comments will be like, he shows support in other ways. And I'm like, I know he does, but still, like, come on, Taichi. Like, you're standing there staring at her. I wanted to, like, hit him with a stick and be like, do something. Do something. So maybe he will later. But anyway, like, she's clearly upset. Like, if you like this girl, cheer her up. But then at least Tsutomu and Scuba, she's like, something's wrong. At least they show up and they're like, hey, we did it, Ayase. Like, that part was super cute. That was adorable. I love that. I love them. I'm so glad they won their matches. So that was great. Anyway, so we go beyond the intro to I can look up and see the snowy cap of Mount Fuji. I will miss the intro. I'm assuming we might get it in the OVA, so we'll see. So we have Arata. Arata was champion of Class A. And then we have The others behind him, Shinobu is pissed with her little forehead patch. Aromu is not happy, and neither is Megumu, but also all dark-haired competitors. Interesting. All dark-haired competitors, and almost all of them bespectacled, except for Shinobu. Interesting. So then Taichi was the Class B champion. Nobody else except Rion matters. F you, Retro-kun. And then, the Kamino Tsutomu was the Class C champion plus one other. So whenever the coach said that there were only 2 undefeated people, that's because Taichi and Arata were the only 2 undefeated in the tournament. Go figure. We'll talk about that in a hot second. But this means that Tsutomu lost their final match. But because they took the top 2 to move on to Class B, he was one of the top 2. And then Scuba clearly has lost a match, but he was among the top 4. So he made it to the final. So I'm assuming that he probably lost the final match, but he made it to the final, so he got to bump up to Class C. That's such a cute thing, though, for him to take a picture with him in the certificate. That feels very freshman, like first-year competitor thing to do. That checks out. And then Chihaya, clapping there. I love that Nishida's like, wow, we think back to the beginning of this season. Chihaya's goal was that they were going to win every single class, and they did, except for Class A. And Chihaya's greed shows up, where she's like, I had imagined, like, this is how I had pictured. It was supposed to go like this. I love that Taichi just looks so impassionate in that one. He's just like, yeah, I won. Like, Taichi just doesn't look like he's affected at all, which, again, this is how Chihaya views him, so she just views him not being affected. I think that in itself is telling. In my mind, looking at that image, because you see Tsutomu and Scuba are like, we did it, but Taichi's just standing there. Again, in my mind, I know Chihaya knows that Taichi cares about her, that he thinks about her, and she appreciates that from what we've been seeing. But I feel like she doesn't realize that Taichi loves Karuta as much as she does, or loves it more than him just playing to be around her. I don't think she realizes that, because that image right there is the proof. Like, he's not, like, blushing or smiling. He's not acting like he was. And I know she saw him act like that when he won Class A, but in her mind, it's not cemented. So he needs to do more to show that he really cares about Karuta, and right now he's not really cemented that in her brain. So there's that. But she's like, I got really frustrated with Chihaya, because when she's like, everyone else did their best, I felt bad for her, because I feel like she had a lot of handicaps going in this tournament. Like, the injury to her hand, she literally had to have surgery on it. So I feel like she's really hard on herself, and I wanted Chihaya. It made me sad that she was so hard on herself, because she did try her best. Like, did she do her best? Well, no, her hand was hurt. But that's not her fault. That's, a fluke thing that happened. She's like, I couldn't do it. It's sad, because I can understand Chihaya's frustration, and I'm sad for her. It makes me want to, like, give her a big hug, because I'm like, it's okay, you're going to be fine. It's going to all bounce back. So, as they're going, the president offers her the opportunity to get a Class A video, and she's like, here's my email address. Which, of course, Aromu's like, we don't even have the contact info of the coach, which Aromu does not need the contact info. Aromu is like 2 steps away from sexual harassment. I'm like, sir, you need to back the frick off. That's crazy. Like, no, let's not do that. Of course, Taichi's the one that calls her, because he always is. And then he's like, even I don't have her email address. Like, it's dangerous to give Aromu that kind of information. Yes, indeed. And she's like, did anyone else notice that only 2 players went the entire individual tournament without a loss? Arata and Taichi. They definitely, like, that's a shot. That is a shot right there. Framing Taichi and Arata as 2 rivals. That's a shot. Which, again, Arata's not even concerned about Taichi as a rival at this point. He's just like, oh, good job, bro. You made it to Class A. That's awesome. Like, Taichi's the one having, like, the mental, like, freak out in his mind about facing Arata and all of that. I am disappointed that Taichi didn't, like, take a stand. And here's my thing with Taichi on his rivalry with Arata and his crush on Chihaya. I don't think it's fair to either Arata or Chihaya that Taichi's not vocalizing these things. I'm a little bit miffed at Kana about all this, but we'll get to it. I'm a little bit mad at her, but I'm like, it's not fair to these people. I don't like the idea of him going behind their backs and saying these things about them and thinking them and not vocalizing it to their face. I don't like people that do that. I don't think that that's cool. If you don't have a problem with somebody, tell them to their face. Let them know, because that's not fair. How are they going to do anything if they don't know about it? And then if you like someone, tell it to their face. And if they reject you, they reject you. That's part of being human. They have that right. They reserve that right to not accept your love. And that sucks. And it's heartbreaking, but it happens. And it's like, to not tell Chihaya, it almost feels like a little bit of manipulation, and I don't like it, but we're not there yet. But I was really wanting Taichi to, like, grow some balls and declare that he's Arata's rival now that he's in Class A, but he's not doing it. So maybe he'll do it next season. I don't know. But I was a little bit like, that's such a good shot, but there's no, like, oomph behind it because they're not even rivals, you know? This part here, though, was very relatable because as someone that has grown up in a rural area, there's a lot of times where you go get an opinion and the doctor's like, I don't know. I was like, I went through a whole series of things this last winter with medical stuff that turns out didn't do anything. So it's like, cool, great, wonderful. Guess we'll start back at square one. So she goes to a bigger hospital and they're like, you'll probably have to get an MRI. I've gotten an MRI before, but it wasn't just like the hand one. It was one where you have to like go into the full body thing. Granted, I think that would almost be worse because at least in the full body thing, you really can't move. So you're just stuck there and you just have to sit there and they give you music to listen to. And it wasn't that bad at all. But here I would be afraid if the rest of my body was not checked that I would move this and it would be a problem. So yeah, fun times. So they take the MRI and they find out enchondromatosis. So enchondromatosis. Okay, so let's see. I want to look up find this here. What have we got here? I want to go to the Children's Hospital of St. Louis. They have a page on it. It is a benign growth of cartilage that develops on the bones. These growths most commonly occur in limb bones, especially in hands and feet, but they can occur on the skull, ribs, and vertebrae. They are usually form as a single lesion. When multiple enchondromas form, a condition is referred to as enchondromatosis. While it's a rare condition, it can lead to severe deformity of affected areas as a result of expanding, elongated, or popcorn-shaped tumors. It's not hereditary and typically becomes apparent by early childhood. For a majority of cases, the masses do not yield any pain. After puberty, the tumors can become dormant in growth, but those with enchondromatosis face the potential risk of asymmetrical limb links, pain in the affected areas, and fractures. Although rare, it could transform into chondrosarcoma, a cancer composed of cartilage-producing cells. And they basically say the treatment is after getting a MRI, surgery is the preferred treatment method. Depending on location and gravity, several options may be necessary. Okay, so that's basically how they describe it in this, that it's a rare condition. And I think it's good that Chihaya was just focused on the fact of how it was going to affect her Karuta skills, because that's pretty scary to like have to do a hand surgery, you know, in order to be able to perform. But she's like, it's only on this index finger and the bone softening. It's a really rare disorder. And most people live their entire lives without knowing that they have it. And it makes sense because she's using her hand for the swings and everything. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? She's like, well, most people ignore it, but if I'm going to use my hands a lot, I need to get surgery so I don't have to worry about it. As scary as it was to do full anesthesia and be hospitalized for a week, which is crazy, at least she got to do it during her summer vacation where it wasn't as busy. I do think that it's good that they got the surgery out of the way. And now moving forward into season 3, it won't be a big deal. She'll be recovered from it. She'll be able to use her hand. It'll be something she can, you know, kind of move forward from. And it doesn't sound like it's going to be a continuous thing that pops up in the series. I did feel bad for her, though, because, like, the idea of anesthesia and surgery and being in the hospital for a week is terrifying. But, you know, she handles it really well. I like that her sister's like, take good care of my laptop. Like, Chitose is like, take care of this laptop, you know. It's the only one I got. But she's using it for homework and to look at the thing. They're like, we'll come back tomorrow before your operation. So she watches the tape of the match before her operation. Which, girl, getting her in the mood, that's for sure. Okay, so was this a spoiler? Did people mention this from the manga before we got it in the episode? I'm going to be really, like, please double check in the future, y'all. If y'all are going to point out manga differences from seasons 1 to season 2, or when we get to season 3, if you're going to point out manga differences, please make sure it does not show up in the anime, because I felt like this was a spoiler, and I don't know if it should have been revealed yet or been revealed after this, so please be careful. Please know that. But yeah, it's taken from Chitose. And he honestly doesn't have, like, a big reaction to it. He's just like, oh. And then, of course, the guy that works there is like, I like girls with bigger boobs. And big enough to close you in between them. And Narada's like, I don't want to talk about this right now. So she finally answers him on the phone. And they actually talk. And then she's like, what do I say? So I think it's interesting that Chihaya, I'm glad she called him back. I'm glad she asked him because she's like, I need to talk to you about this. I'm glad that that conversation was not held off or didn't happen, because I would have been livid if it hadn't. But the pacing of this part of the episode is kind of weird to me. Like, I really like the fact that they go to get her flowers. And Sumire's like, you know, you need to take somebody flowers when you go to the hospital. This part was kind of weird because Sumire looks back like, hey, Taichi, you clearly like this girl. You should say something. Which I agree with. I do agree with Sumire and them that he needs to try harder. If he really likes her, he needs to do one of two things. He either needs to back off and tell everybody that he doesn't like her that way, or if he still likes her that way, he needs to tell her and try harder to communicate that, because it's not fair to her to not know and everybody else know except her. It's not fair. And so she's looking at him like, well, aren't you going to say something? They're like, well, what if we get her something to read? What if we just get her ice cream? And I'm like, ice cream's a terrible idea. And as they run off to go get ice cream, Nishida and Tsutomu, she's like, do you want any flowers? And he's like, well, can I get some that are a cheerful color? You know, she's probably feeling down. Like, I'm glad, like, Taichi's just like, oh, well, I just don't know. I'm like, you like her. Quit being a bitch. Get her the damn flowers. It's not hard. Like, just get her flowers. She is probably feeling down. Like, I felt good that he was getting her these flowers, but then I'm like, as per usual, Taichi has the worst timing of anyone in any anime. The worst timing. And she's like, I want to get better at Karuta. And Arata's like, well, that's a simple, request. And she's like, it's all I can think about. I've been working hard for a really long time. And she's like, I'm always serious and fired up. But she's like, you're able to, like, be so calm. Like, how do you do it? And I do agree, like, I feel like Chihaya is breaking the fourth wall, like, with the mangaka being like, it feels like we're in different countries. It feels like we have all this distance between us. And I'm like, if y'all would just talk, it would be better. But she's like, and finally Arata's like, okay, I'm going to answer the question, which I'm glad that he had a little time to reflect. And he's like, whether it's an official match or a practice match, I always go back to that room when I'm playing. And she's like, that room? And then that's when the grandfather's like, when did you have the most fun playing Karuta? And he's like, no, where I was never scared, no matter who came in. And he's like, where I was happy and having fun, and I wish it would never end. Back when you and I played Karuta in that old apartment. He finally told her! So, she has the understanding that the reason why he's so calm, the reason why he's able to tap into this state of zen is because he's thinking of her and him playing in that apartment, which is crazy. Like, that is such a shoujo panel right there. The shoujo-iest of shoujo panels, him telling her that. Because he's basically saying, like, you and I playing Karuta is when I'm the most happy. And that's been what she's been going back to, including Taichi, let's be fair, but including all three of them. Arata's not thinking of Taichi. Yeah, no, I'm sure that Arata thinks about him playing with Taichi and Chihaya when they were kids, but he's not included in his happy space. When he's doing the happy space, he's like, it's me and you is what it is, right? So I had to restart my camera here, so we're going to go back to this and restart it here in 3, 2, 1. What a shoujo panel, and for her to have that realization and her to be back in that old apartment. And I think it's interesting that when she goes back to think about it, she thinks of well, why would he think back to that moment? Because that apartment was falling apart. It was nasty. It wasn't not nasty, but it was falling apart and it was old. And she's it's not exactly a place you would think about when you think of your happy place. But for him and her thinking back, she's she thinks of back when they were all playing, and he's you'll be the best in the world. Now, to be fair to Taichi, when she thinks back, she does think back of when it's just the two of them, but she also thinks back to when it's the three of them. So that part, at least, she is including Taichi in that flashback. She's the time we spent there is making Arata stronger. Now, Arata, as people have commented, Arata supposedly thinks that Taichi likes Chihaya, and so he doesn't know how Chihaya feels, so he's not trying to be a bad bro, so he's not, saying that, he likes her. And I don't know, to be fair, I don't know if Arata likes her the way that Taichi likes her. Do I think that Arata likes Chihaya? Yes. Do I think Arata likes Chihaya as deeply as Taichi does? No, I don't. But also, Taichi's been around Chihaya for quite a while, so he's had time to develop those feelings. Arata, because the mangaka does not seem to let these characters interact, Arata's not had that time with Chihaya. So how would he be expected to have this? They've not had equal time with her, so why would he be expected to have an equal crush on her that Taichi does? This part was weird, though. They showed up to the hospital, and Taichi, of course, is holding the flowers. The flowers are these little peach roses, which are perfect color. And then he looks over and sees her on the phone. Now, he has this reaction. Does he know that she's on the phone with Arata? Not necessarily. She could have been on the phone with her mom or her sister, But Taichi immediately has his shoujo romance sensor on. And the way she's looking, I guess the way she's looking would indicate she's not talking to her parents or her sister. She's I don't understand these feelings. I feel a little bit bad for Chihaya because Arata doesn't understand the distance is really between them, and Chihaya's trying to figure out how she feels about Arata, and someone that she's viewed on a pedestal as a deity that now maybe she's realizing is more human, and what does she do with those emotions? But she said, for the rest of my life, I'll always love Karuta. And I'll always love Arata. Now, here's the thing. That love that she has for Arata, she's trying to figure out, is that love just romance? Or is that love just platonic? I'm always going to love Arata as a friend, as someone close to me? Or is that love something more? Is that love romantic? She doesn't know exactly. Is that love something else? And so she knows she'll always love him, but what will that love become? Will it become something romantic, or will it become just, we're friends and that's all, and it's platonic? I don't know. I do think it's good that she's I do think it's good that she's having these conversations and is starting to think about these things, at least to, be thinking about them. I don't like the idea of rushing teenagers to you have to be in love with someone. You have to decide what you love. I don't like that at all. As somebody that's on the asexual spectrum, no, you don't. And I don't like that forcing. I feel like that's weird. But I do think it's good that she's thinking about this, So they're do not practice swinging until the cast is off. I like how the nurses and everybody are very adamant about that. They hold her up to it and they're no, you can't do that. I love that they're all about that. That's fun. And also her hair in the bun is really adorable. they're like, Chitose, leave her alone. And they tell her to finish her homework. They do give her the daddy bear, like, stuffed animal, which was really cute. I like the sister is very much a tsundere. The sister's like, do your homework and use your computer, but, like, here's my laptop to do the homework on, and here's a stuffed bear. Like, she's such a tsundere. I kind of love the sister for it. So Chihaya is working on her homework. I like that the lady's like, good for you. The nurse is like, good for you. And so she's been tasked to compose poetry. And as anyone will tell you, you have to read books in order to write. You have to read to write. And so Kana is like, you need to read all of these poems before you're going to be able to compose your own, right? Only 10% of the meaning of poetry is understood. Poetry's hard. Poetry really is difficult. And I'm like, it's going to be okay. We're not asking her to write Pulitzer Prize winning pieces here, you know? But I do think, I'm like, girl, Kana went about this the wrong way. Kana should have been like, use the poetry that you've been using in Karuta to help inspire you to write your own. She should have gone that route. Like, yes, she does need to read poetry, but like, tell Chihaya to tap into her Karuta roots, and that probably would have helped, honestly. I'm surprised she didn't do that. And she's like, I managed to compose 5 poems before July ended. This part here was so cute where she's just doing like the doodles. This felt very Sailor Moon. I was like getting a lot of Serena vibes, being like, I don't want to do my English homework. Like that was really cute. But she ends up thinking about, I'll always go back to that room when I'm playing. And she thinks about Arata saying, you'll be the best in the world. Yep. And then she's like, because of Arata, my whole life has been about Karuta, striving to become stronger and to receive his passion. If I were Taichi hearing this inner conversation, I probably would be upset. Because she's like, I want to be on the receiving end of that passion as much as, you know, because he's so good at Karuta. She's like, I want to match that. You know, I love that. As an Arata Chihaya shipper, I'm all about it. So then Kana and Taichi, who both look very fashionable. Kana looks absolutely boho and adorable. Taichi has the most 2010 outfit in the history of 2010s. So they get the little visitor badge and they go there. And of course, Taichi's like, you know, is it okay if you're moving around? He's being very concerned. And she's like, and they talk about the first poem he reads. And the first 2 poems are about like ice cream and Shinobu. And Taichi's like, you know, these aren't good poems. Your grade's going to drop if you turn those in. But then Kana reads the other poems. Says, inside a room isolated from the summer heat, I feel bliss upon hearing your words. And she thinks about her being on the phone, which I'm assuming, here's my thing, that to me, I was a little confused because it seemed like Kana knew that she was talking to Arata on the phone. And she's like, oh, I don't remember a thing when I was knocked out. And then the other poem is, will I ever turn the corner and find you? I can only wait for a dream or a miracle. Now, in my mind, and then she's thinking, I'm a little bit mad at Kana, if I'm being real, because if I were Kana and I were Chihaya's friend, I would not go behind Chihaya's back to Taichi, who hasn't manned up to tell her that he has a crush on her, and be like, you need to do better and you need to try to win her over, or you're not going to win. Why is this a contest? Why is this a contest? Like, that's not fair to Chihaya. And I was kind of mad because if my friend Kana went to some guy who hasn't had the balls to confess to me and was trying to help him, but didn't have the sense to come to me and be like, oh, do you like Arata? Or do you like Taichi? Like, girl, come to me. Like, don't go behind my back to this other guy. Like, that's kind of bullshit. I don't like that at all. And I'm like, if she likes Arata, why are you trying to convince Taichi to, like, sway her vote and, like, change her mind? Like, what? That's so weird to me. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that Kana didn't go to Chihaya and ask her who she likes. Like, I don't like that. Because she gets on to Taichi being like, you clearly like her. And she says, you have to try harder. But I'm like, you don't have to invite me along when you visit her in the hospital. Like, she's not going to be clueless for the rest of her life. I don't like that at all. Like, just talk to Chihaya. Ask her how she feels about him. Why are you all doing this behind her back? I don't like that. I'm like, if you are good friends, you will tell it to her face. Like, whatever. Or if she's going to tell that to Taichi, she needs to go to Chihaya and talk to her about it. Because I'm like, is she, like, and then Taichi's like, oh, I know. And I'm like, well, then do something about it. Which he does, but only because Kana, like, makes him. So, anyway, I do like, this part is weird, too. Where he's like, oh, I'll walk you home, coach. And she's like, no. She's like, if I'm around you too much, I'm afraid I'll have dreams about you. And he's like, oh, well, I would love that. And it's like, no. She's like, why are you already here when you've left the club? Yeah, like, no, get him away. That's sexual harassment. I don't like that at all. So yeah, I do like the conversation that she has with Chihaya and asking if it was useful or not and talking about Arata and getting her game sense. You really get an idea that the coach and Chihaya are kind of the same cloth. They both view matches very clinically and they like analyzing it, and Chihaya gets kind of overwhelmed by everything that the coach is telling her, but it's in a good way. Like, I really liked it. I liked the conversation that they have and how she kind of is overwhelmed, but it's like in a good way because she's giving her all this information. And then she's like, hey, we're having a 2-day summer camp. Why don't everybody from the Mizuzawa come? And again, I get, like, Kana's trying to play matchmaker, but I'm also kind of like, did you not see Sumire? Didn't you just have a conversation with Sumire, like, 2 days ago where she clearly still likes Taichi, and you're going behind her back, too? Like, what are you bitches doing? Like, that's so weird to me. Like, be upfront. Like, quit being bitches. But yeah, so they move forward. And Taichi's like, all we can do is move forward, which is very true. She's like, it has to be the two of you going there alone. But I'm like, Taichi ain't gonna do shit, Kana. Surprising no one. Taichi's probably not gonna get the balls to do anything. So you're wasting your time. I at least feel like Kana should be asking Chihaya how she feels about Arata. And if Chihaya likes Arata, I don't like the idea of trying to, like, sway someone's love of someone. That's so weird. Isn't it? It's so weird. Like, this show has a very Taichi Chihaya agenda, and it doesn't work for me right now because Taichi's he's not doing a damn thing. So it's like, I wanted him to do something with the flowers, like give her the flowers, but then he didn't. We didn't get anything with the flowers. It just, like, cut off from there. So, like, any chance to develop that, like, romantic moment was gone and was no longer there. We never even see the flowers again. So did he even give them to her? It's so bizarre. Like, I keep waiting for the romance part of the series to get better, but it's just not my cup of tea at all. And I don't know what to do about it. I want it to get better, and it's not living up to what I want. But anyway, so then we skip the credits, and Arata makes known that he's leaving, and the guy at the bookstore is very sad that Arata is leaving. And Arata's like, dude. Which was great. So, anyway, I liked this episode, but it's going to be very hard to separate the shipping aspect of this show from how I feel, because the shipping is such a big part of it. It's going to be so hard for me because somebody was like, well, I don't really watch Chihaya for the shipping. And I'm like, it's so embedded into the series. I don't know how y'all can separate yourself from it. I really don't. It is crazy to me. So, but whatever. But anyway, I wish that Kana would just talk to Chihaya rather than going behind her back. It's not good friend material things to do. Not a good friend thing to do. And Taichi ain't going to do nothing, so who knows. Anyway, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I will be looking at the OVA next week, and then we'll be taking a hiatus from Chihayafuru for the time being. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll have my lingering thoughts about season 2 and all that at the end of next week with the OVA for Chihayafuru. And I'll see you then.